So hello, everyone, and welcome back to Retention Chronicles. Today, we have a great guest joining us. Louise, thank you so much for making the time. Super excited to have you. I'm going to ask you to say hi and intro yourself to our listeners.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Louise. I'm co-founder and CEO of Martie. Martie.com is, I actually say it's like the first online only grocery store to do
I
something
love it.
great and have a mission that is different than everyone else. So we're here to fight food inequality. We're here to fight food waste, essentially changing the way we feed the planet. So we work with brands and buy surplus inventory. I'm sure we're going to get into it, overstock surplus inventory, and we offer it really pennies on the dollar to the consumer. So really trying to create affordable ways for people to get food while helping brands and minimize their food waste. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. We're definitely going to get into all of that. But first, we always like to start out with your background. So can you tell us what, everything that led up to you starting Martie? What was your background? What was that like?
Yeah, I started my first company when I was 19. So
Oh,
Martie
wow.
now is my fourth company. So I've been in this ring hoop for a while. I'm from Sweden. So my first two companies were started, acquired, just like operated from Sweden. One of them was an e-commerce store. This now is like 15 years ago. So very different. Did not have all the
Ahead of the
tools
curve.
that we know now, right? So no, like Shopify was not what it was. Facebook advertising, SEO, like even tools like the one you're representing, like it just honestly was not accessible. So very different journey. My first company was an e-commerce back in the days. That was acquired, and I moved on to building an ad network. And that was also, it's an interesting story because building an e-commerce all those years ago, marketing was really hard. Like finding volume in online ads to a specific audience, it's hard. I'm laughing because now we can't phantom, like it's hard to get like volume with ads online to specific audiences with all the tools that we have at the top of our hand. But at this point it was. So I started an ad network where we really specialized on segmenting and collecting different types of sites and audiences under one roof. So I did that, and that company was actually acquired last year. We sold it last year. I wasn't operational more than like being I was chair board and shareholder for the last 8 years, but I was only CEO for the first 5. So that was a really fun journey. And of course, the space, ad network and ad tech moving and changing a ton in those 12 years of holding. So that was really exciting. And then I went from that to really understanding my own kind of mission and like companies that I want to build. And it's very important for me to build companies that make people healthier. So I really came to the conclusion that whatever I spend my time on, I want to make sure can have the impact of changing people's lives for the better. So I went on and I built a peer-to-peer marketplace for fitness, so a fitness tech company. And we can talk about peer-to-peer marketplaces and why they're hard and why many of them fail. Well, that would take up this entire episode and more. But I could just say there was a lot of learnings, and we ended up pivoting to being a SaaS platform. Just bringing me further away from my own mission of building companies that are consumer based and making people healthier. So with that, I decided to jump ship and take all those learnings and move into food, because really one of the epiphanies that really like rang true, we always say that there's an 80-20 rule. If you don't eat the right things, it doesn't matter how much you move. So I was kind of like, let's go back to the basics and build a big company in food if I want to make people healthier. And that brought me on my separate journey. And now today I'm here building Martie. And Martie's we've just been in market about 14 months. So it took me a little time to find my footing in what a big company in food could look like and where I thought the opportunity lay.
Yeah, there's so much to go in, like to dive into there, which is wonderful. So I wanna focus on a couple of things. So starting out with, I'm gonna try and do it chronologically. Starting out with the ad network that you started with. I know just before we hopped on this call, we were talking about segmentation because it's very important with Lomo and the customer experience just in general. So how did you kind of like, 15, I believe you said 15 years ago or so was when you were in that industry. So how did you approach segmentation back then without all of the platforms that we now know and love?
Yeah. So the full idea, again, I had an e-commerce company before that was acquired, and wherever I went to try and buy online advertising, it was just really clunky. Like at that point, you basically bought, share of network towards anyone that wanted to see these ads. You could either go to big sites to get volume, or you needed to buy just like an array of different sites. And you know what? Like it's so different today than what it was when I started this ad network. Like the best segmentation that we started with was just saying like, hey guys, here's all the finance and business and economy sites. Like this is the audience, and now you can buy 20 of them. And then, we talking about cookies, like we were selling kind of like cookie targeting at that point of time. And that was kind of new. It's wild to think of because it sounds so stupid. But at that point, we were kind of new in Europe to say like, hey, you can track this person that has this behavior, that has an account on this financing site. So we know kind of who it is, and we can follow this person on another 30 sites. That was kind of cool and new. So it's just, I almost feel stupid talking about it because at this point, this was shiny objects.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's just very different, right? Like the demographics we could pull, the certainty of who it was just far from where we are today. And it's interesting, looking at like how online advertising works today. If we just like look at the ads, like then you can go in to talk about emails and like all the retargeting tools that we have on platforms. But just when you're looking at ads, we're kind of like in a place today where you don't segment and cut so much yourself. You basically let it run, and the algorithm figures out who wants to see it. So we've gone like 360 since that time, where like we were trying to cut and dice and who saw the ads, and then we were doing that really well for a period of time, and now we're kind of back in a space where we say like just all money in one bucket and the system will figure it out. So it's just a lot of happened since.
Yeah, isn't that funny that like within the time span of 15 years or however long, like you can have that 360 flip where you go from like something that's innovative, like kind of selling cookies, and then or cookie targeting, and then to go like to the opposite side where it's like, okay, now you have all this information, and then we start to see like privacy laws come into play, and then like changing that whole field entirely, what that looks like, how people are approaching the new targeting or the new segmentation tools with that new added element. And then it's like crazy also to think about how technology, and even with like AI right now, like just everything that's going on with chat GPT, is like, how does that all eventually factor into it, where like algorithms are going to be influenced and everything. It's kind of crazy to think about, but it's so fascinating at the same time.
It is. And let's see where we are in another 15 years, right? Like it's ever changing and ever evolving. So it just keeps you on your toes, which is fun.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Okay. That was a great tidbit to share. Thank you for doing so. I also want to ask, so it seems like from your past 4 ventures that there's a common thread of, or you actually shared it, of you wanting to make sure that where you're putting your time and energy into can have a good impact on those around you, on the world. And so whether it is through your fitness technology or through Martie or what have you, where do you think, and I think this will lead into, why you founded Martie, has there always been an interest just like personally about like health and fitness and wellness in general? And like, was there a point in time where you clicked into that, or was it always just something you've grown up with like having that be at the forefront of how you live?
Yeah. So my first 2 companies really wasn't that. I think as many people, when you start your first company or you're getting after your first job, it's very common to think what you want is financial success. And that definitely was a big driver for me. Starting my first company at 19 and seeing that could like have a continued life after me. And then starting this ad network, we grew into a couple of countries during my time as CEO and kind of like expanded the team and ad networks and in that world. it's tricky because it's really hard to build a unicorn. It's not necessarily scalable, but it's really good money, you know? And I actually came to, like, I grew up with my with my second company. I was 26 when I started noticing that I was trying to pull this company into new directions that wasn't necessarily benefiting the company, but I was getting bored. I was having a hard time figuring out why I was getting up so early and working so many hours and doing what I was, doing. It was fun, but also like just like pushing my team and myself to say more revenue and more margin didn't resonate. And that was really hard. Like it was
Yeah.
my baby, it was my company. I'd hired all the staff. I didn't really knew anything else than like running my own businesses. And deciding to step down as CEO is incredibly difficult. It's difficult for your ego. It's difficult to all of a sudden not know what you're going to do and what your next steps are. But in that process, that's when I really had to do the deep work and realizing what will keep me going. I still want to work. I love working. Me and my co-founder always laughs because we're kind of like workaholics. We love working, but like not for money. Like that wasn't the end goal. I just realized that in that moment in time. And yeah, I've always been the person who, giving you advice like, oh, my back hurts. I'm like, oh, these are the exercises and this is what you should do. And believe me, guys, I'm not doing that anymore because no one wants that person in their life. It's
Right.
all from like wanting to help and being helpful, but it's just people don't
Mhm.
appreciate it. So that's kind of like where I transitioned to saying if I can build companies instead that make people healthier, like that's something that I feel very passionate about. And it's cool. I was 26 and this is like, I'm dating myself, but like a good 10 years ago. And it still is extremely true to my own values and mission and what I want to work to do. It really excites me every day to work towards that goal of making people healthier.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I love that response. I think too, I love that you addressed or just brought attention to like the difficulty of stepping down from, your baby, like being a CEO, having your company and then making that decision because you knew it was the right thing to do in that moment. And I think it's a lot of the times, like I speak to either founders or entrepreneurs, and it's really easy to talk about all the like glowy, fun stuff, right? When you're like on cloud nine, everything. But it's just as valuable to have that message of like if you find that what you're working on in the moment isn't doing everything it should and needs to be doing for you, it's the better decision for yourself to change your pathway or take yourself out of that role, whatever it may be. And I also love that you brought up that through that process, you learned that, yes, maybe you're a workaholic, but not necessarily for the money. And I feel like I
Right.
can relate to that a lot because it isn't necessarily money that has motivated me in my drive, but just the feeling of having an accomplishment. Like, I feel like
Right.
that is more, would you relate to that? Or like, what would you say has been like that motivator for, your drive to work?
Yeah. I love solving problems. Like the creative
Mm,
process of running a company is so fulfilling for me. And it's fun, running a company, doing what we're doing. It's like problem solving every day. And then you're problem solving to this North Star of like what we want to do in the future. And if I look at Martie, for instance, me and Kari, we really came together as co-founders talking about food inequality. People are struggling to put food on the table and it's not fair. The second level of this is when you look at affordable foods, pardon my French, but they're all crap, like they're just like the ingredients are not healthy and good for you. So the people that are being hit twice. How can we change that? If you're not feeding your family the correct things, you're going to end up with sicknesses. And like, it's just like a never ending story that just really hard cycle to get out of. So with Martie, like number one for us is making sure that you get foods that you know and love, recognizable brands at the best possible prices. We stay true to sending our orders everywhere in our state. So the majority of online grocery stores basically operate in the dense cities because shipping is a lot cheaper when you're in dense areas. And we make it true and part of our mission to ship everywhere in our state. So even rural communities can access our foods, where not most, very, very many rural communities are actually food deserts. And honestly, like a long-term goal for me as a founder, once we have built scale and we are a big company, what's really cool and what we can do, if you usually buy your Kraft mac and cheese, when I can start presenting at least the organic Annie's mac and cheese at the same price point, you don't have to know that you're moving into healthier habits. Price is rules. Affordability is like the key for the majority of the US, right? So if I can all of a sudden start presenting you with brands you recognize that are slightly better for you and your family, and you don't have to pay more, then we can start seeing really cool change in our society long term. So having this creative process of how do we make everything work, what we're doing at Martie is a really difficult, cumbersome, challenging company to build. So there's lots of creativity and challenges to circumvent. And that long-term goal, the North Star, is so exciting for me. And thinking of what that could mean for so many people really is a key driver for me.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue into talking more about Martie. So can you tell us, I think we've covered for the most part, unless there's anything else you'd like to add, kind of what inspired you, like the motivation behind starting Martie. But I want to walk through kind of more of those, like more of the difficult processes with Martie, because I know your website does a great job explaining it, and I will admit, like, I had no idea how, like overstock, and I still really don't know much, but like how you could turn overstocked items or like items that are mislabeled into a business and resell those. So can you go into more detail around kind of like the business side of that?
Yeah, and just a bit more background. So I was lucky enough to find my co-founder Kari about 3 years ago. And again, we started talking about these big issues. We're like, we need to solve, we need to solve them. But it's, yes, and it's a really hard, like the problems that we were looking at is food inequality, like cheaper foods comes at less quality. And then we were looking at the like just food system at large and the food waste and like issues with sustainability. And so finding a solution for these three challenges and problems are really hard. And it did bring us on somewhat of a detour. So in 2019, we launched a different company where we actually produce foods. So in 2019, we put 5 brands to market where we did not use any of the harmful ingredients that are in market. We made sure that we were producing organic foods, better for you foods, and we were doing our uttermost to like push the prices to be super accessible and affordable. And at the end of that year, we were doing really well when we're looking at our revenue number and retention numbers and so forth. So we got a bit, I don't know, maybe too, like our confidence was really good. So we started doing seasonal products. And that was all great until January rolled around and no one wanted to touch our holiday baking mix. And we found ourselves in a position where like, we would love to donate, but Jesus, it is not easy for an up and coming brand to donate foods. It's expensive and cumbersome. And then we were looking at our liquidation partners, and there's so many of them where you just lose control. You have no idea where your product's going to be sold, how they're going to be presented, for what price. We have built up brand affinity. So even for us, like sitting at a $1 store next to a dusty old beat up can of peas was like, is that where we have to go? Yeah. And we just felt like we need a better solution. And it's part of this, we really went deep on the issue that 30 to 40% of foods go to landfill, even though it's perfectly fine to consume. And here's the thing, we understood why. We totally understood why someone would go, no, I can't afford like sending this off, like packing it up nicely, sending it to donations. And these liquidation partners are going to kill my brand. Like I can't have my products out there. We totally understood why this happens. And that's why we just basically came to a few core beliefs in that process. And that is, number one, there's enough food to go around. It is the going around that is the issue. We also realized that, food doesn't discriminate food waste. Even quality foods, organic, healthy for you foods will have surplus and overstock. And one challenge here can be the other solution. So we sold these brands, we shut down that company, we started focusing on Martie. And really what we do, we work with, again, the brands you know and love. 30 to 40% of foods go to landfill. There's another huge chunk of foods that go to these liquidation partners that does not necessarily care for brand affinity, for the security of the brand. So what we're doing here is we're coming in as a new fresh partner in the space of liquidation. We talk to these brands, we try to understand what's your challenge in production. Production is really hard. Usually when you produce, you produce more than you know that you're going to sell, because there might be dented boxes, there might be an issue throughout the process of production, there might be all kinds of issues in the actual process of producing. So rather than shorting yourself, you want to overproduce so that you cover the orders that you have. More than that, you order your ingredients and you print your boxes way before the production run happens. So you've already taken the majority of the cost before the production run happens. The production run usually happens with a third party. So very few brands have their own production facility, which means that they've already paid for a number of units to be produced. So in that production moment where you already have usually overproduced rather than underproduced, if then one of the big retail stores comes back to say, we love working with you, but we're going to pull back 3 of our locations because you didn't sell as well last month as we expected you to, then this brand has a heck of an amount of overstock inventory. There's no problem with the product. The product is freshly made, but they know they don't have a buyer, and having it stand in their warehouse is going to cost them even more because now they're paying for warehouse space. So that's a huge part of just the food industry and how it works and why there's always going to be overstock and surplus. Besides that, it is the issues that can happen in production. So there might be a dented box, there might be a blur on the print. The brand might have a new organic certification, and then all of a sudden, everything that was produced before the label with organic, Whole Foods doesn't want to have it, you know? So everything that was produced before needs to find a second home. Then you have seasonal, like the one problem that we ran into, where you expect to sell more and forecasting is really hard. So seasonal is a huge part of it. Yeah, it's just like a never ending process of like brands are doing everything they can to minimize food waste, but it is really hard. Any brand never want to be shorthanded with inventory when it comes to like growing their own sales and being a good partner to their retail stores and such. And then we have all the added issues that can happen with products in the process of producing.
Yeah, there's so many different areas, it seems like, where I don't want to say like something can go wrong, but where it's just like unexpected, like question marks, right, throughout the whole process. And so like I can imagine and I know you had gone through it with your brand of, like you said, forecasting is really hard to do. And so how do you partner with these brands? Like, how do you get in front of them, tell them about Martie, tell them about like this other option that they could pursue instead of food going into, a landfill or, sitting in a warehouse and incurring costs? How do you approach that?
Yeah, so this is a problem that the brands have had since forever. So this is just like merely a new solution to a problem that they are utterly aware of, right? So this is basically, you can think of this as any other retail relationship with these brands, but they know that we only look at the inventory that is considered being overstock or surplus. Most brands they try to clean out their warehouse every second week or once a month. And at that point, they email us or they call us and they give us a list of what they have, and we negotiate what we're willing to take this inventory for. And our process of getting in front of them is basically as any other like B2B sales process, to just explain that we exist and sort of the benefits of working with us rather than any of the other liquidation partners out there. And of course, like if we have brands that we support, like donating as much as possible to this inventory. It's just really hard for food brands to donate everything. you want to try and recoup some of the associated cost of production to be a functioning company. So that's kind of like where we come into play. And we do, we get the discounts that we offer to our consumers. We're trying to hit a 40 to 70% off from your normal retail stores when you shop at Martie. So that's kind of what we're looking to get from our brand partners, vendors, to pass on those savings to the consumer.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it made another question come to mind. So if you're, if a brand comes to you and says, hey, we have like these items that are in overstock for this specific week or this month, whatever. And then you're negotiating like, okay, yeah, would love to have these, whatever, these products. How do then you, I guess, like, is there a guarantee for the customer that there's always going to be like this specific item that they can purchase at Martie? Like, how are you all trying to
mitigate? That's a great question.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So Martie is a very different shopping experience. I think it's cool because we are hearing from our consumers. It's like, it's fun. It's a treasure hunt. They're excited to shop us because they're getting such great deals. But it also means like a treasure hunt also means like once it's gone, it's gone. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a level of FOMO. Again, the 20-80 rule, like 20% of our most loyal customers, they come back and shop Martie multiple times a week because they don't want to lose on any like great deals. And they want to, they want to shop when they see their favorite brand because they know it's probably going to be sold out in a few days. What we're trying to do and how we're building our inventory is thinking always on categories. What's cool with Martie is we don't do fresh and we don't do frozen. So we do shelf-stable grocery, we do household, health, beauty, pets as categories. And what that means for you as a shopper is anytime you think of shelf-stable groceries, whether that is your coffee, your tea, your pasta sauce, kid snacks, all the above, lots of chocolate, you go to Martie first. So the majority of shopper, they come twice a month and they stock up. They get everything they need that lives in their pantry. Last them probably like a 2-week period, and then they come back and do the same. So our loyal shoppers do that, or super loyal several times a week just to get the deals. But the majority of our customers come twice a month. They shop Martie first, and then they get their milk, their eggs somewhere else. But then they know they're on average saving 50% on any given order. And our average order value is around that $60 per cart. So shopping Martie, you know that you save about $60 per time you shop to cover you, depending on how many people in your household, of course, but for all the pantry, snacks, goods, household, health, beauty items for 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's such an interesting business model because I think it's like that is such a good sell, even right there, right? Like if you spend $60, you're going to save $60 on the stuff that you would have bought somewhere else. Yeah. Like that to the consumer, it's so powerful in that, like, even if you just take aside like the moral support of like, oh, you don't want food to go to waste. You want to help like equalize the system. If you take away like that portion, which I think a lot of consumers care about, and you just have like, oh, how is this personally affecting me? Like the solo story of saving money is a great one. And then you attach everything that you all are doing to make sure that food isn't ending up in a landfill and that you're trying to even the playing field when it comes to equitable processes. So it's like a double win. It seems like where you have both of them.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we call our shoppers Smarties because they shop at
Martie. That's amazing.
So smart, save money on the planet. I appreciate you saying that. I think so too. And again, affordability is one of our key missions here, and it's just amazing when you can use one of the challenges such as food waste to solve another huge issue of just affordable foods, right? And again, with our inventory, just to wrap that up, good to know, we try to stay true to always have, whole bean, ground bean, coffee, pasta sauces, like all those staples in store. And then I can't guarantee if it's going to be Justin's peanut butter or Santa Cruz peanut butter on any given week. They rotate, and it depends on who we can help out to move inventory. But you should know that like you can always find the staples. So you could always rely on Martie to like fill your pantry for the week, which is exciting.
Yeah. So it's kind of like instead of a guarantee of a brand, you have a guarantee of a type of product, it sounds like,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yes. So you can always come back and you can use our buy again, functionality and just fill your cart. And maybe you're going to try some new brands, but you're probably going to recognize them.
Right.
But it will be the items that you need for your household for the month or week.
Yeah. And it like swaps out whatnot.
Right.
The brand. Yeah, that makes sense. And so part of what you mentioned with FOMO marketing, about like your 20% really being loyal Smarties, which I love that. I'm going to use that now. Part of, making sure that they get the like hottest new deals or drops, whatever it is tapping into that FOMO. So how are you like tactically doing that? Like, are you sending out email blasts or SMS when something you get like some new inventory in stock, or is it, how are you updating your customer base?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been in market about 14 months, and I think there's so much more we can do better when it comes to segmenting, when it comes to notifications. We just launched our app, which is really exciting. We gave our top shoppers priority to come in and test it and give us feedback and all that good stuff. And we are doing the thing, especially when we have limited inventory of really cool products. We do segment to send the push notification and app. If you don't have the app, you would get an SMS. If you haven't given us your phone number, you would get an email to just say, hey, you have first dibs on this product. And then if anything is remaining, we send to the rest of our user base. But it is an ongoing conversation of like doing more of that, segmenting and really like tapping into your VIPs is like, it's just so important and a super strong marketing tactics, even for having them be your brand ambassadors and bringing, we're seeing that any brand would see that, the cohorts of people that was brought in by another user is just always going to be the strongest cohorts when you look at retention and ongoing LTV. So it's we can do more, but we're getting around to doing as much as we can here.
Yeah, and that's a like exciting part, I'm sure, right? Like that challenge, you being a lover of solving problems, like how do you continue to iterate on that? I think it's really, I think it's really interesting. Like we rarely get to talk to brands who have their own app. And so like push notifications, right? We always talk about, and I say we as the Malomo side of things, like always are talking and thinking about email and SMS, but it's rare that we get to talk to someone who is also thinking about like push notifications and like, I even just think as a consumer where it's like apps and just my phone in general, I'm personally I check those way more frequently than I do my email. So it makes sense. 100%. It sounds like you have kind of like a waterfall effect of like push notifications first, and then like checking that first. If they don't have that, then SMS and then email, which is, I think that follows a lot of typical user experience. So I wanted to ask you, can you walk us through like what the customer's experience looks like? I don't know if they differ greatly versus like if you're on a browser versus if you're in the app, but if they do, could you also tell us about the differences there?
Yeah, no, I think that, an app is always going to be different for whatever reason, just feels more familiar. You're more connected to it. I think you're more bought in when you have it as an app. We get you to open the app a ton more because of the push notifications. Like activity on the app just is way higher. The number of times we see your face it's just a ton higher if you have the app. And we see that users with the app are starting to use it very much as like, I'm sitting on the bus and I have nothing to do. Let me just like, because it's fun, it's like, what deals is here? It's almost like you would walk into a store without having to shop. You're just browsing because it's exciting and fun. So we're seeing that more like people coming back and checking us out and browsing. And in the app, we built like a For You section where lots of more content is built out so that you can read about more of the brands behind the label, lots of content that actually live on our blog, but that doesn't get as much traffic as when you have it on the app and you're sitting on the bus and you're trying to figure out what to do with your time. So that's a big difference. But aside of that, the experience really is the same. So we don't do any membership fees. We don't do any subscription. It's always free to come and shop. Once you start adding products to cart, we do ask that you create an account, and that's just to make the experience, talking about, making it more personal, making sure that we show you the products that you want to see, making sure that you, that we can ping you back if things are low in stock and so forth. So no membership, no subscriptions. We do ask that you create an account once you're like starting to shop with us. And at any given point of time, since we're so young, we've had, fairly few products in store, probably 500-600 at any given point of time, but it's an exciting time. You'll see now, in only 2 weeks, we're starting to climb up to say 800 products. And before end of year, we will always be around the 1,500 mark of products. So the experience will just continue relying more on, good categories, on search. It's a huge difference in how you build your e-com experience when you have 500 products versus 1,500. So the experience today, we have many shoppers that use us often that come in and they simply like go to shop all. And they do all their shopping because they don't want to miss anything and they want to see what's in store. And that's just the way for them to just absorb everything. So talk to me in a year, that experience will be, very heavy to just go through everything. And hence, having created an account and for us to like make sure that we guide you to what you want to see is going to be very important. And I think at that point, the experience on the app versus online will also start being very different because of how we need to guide you and the tools that we have in an app versus online. So we're definitely stepping into a new space in the coming couple of months where the experience will start shifting to and being just having to be more personal to your own interests.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that people will just go on and like start scrolling because they're bored. And we had another guest on the podcast who said like attention is the currency of the internet. And it like as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that really just it rang true, because if you can get people to your app, to open your app, and like whether they're shopping or whether they're reading those blogs that are telling them about like the foods that they're eating, or just, more of the higher funnel, like high funnel content, it's great because then, the more familiar they're becoming with your brand and with the experience, and the more value that they're getting out of it. And I think that's just like so cool. So interesting to hear you walk through. And as you did, I was curious if you happen to know what % of your customers have downloaded the app. Like, do you know that breakdown between where they fall?
Yeah. Well, so we just released it to our VIP shoppers. I think this is like 2 weeks ago, and we gave them like a 2-week period to just like come and explore.
Play around in there.
Yeah. So, a good more than 50% of them have downloaded the app, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we just started marketing, like just telling people, not even marketing, but telling people when they come to our site on mobile that the app exists, like end of last week. So I don't have the latest numbers since we did, but the engaged shopper seems very excited to get it, and we're also putting it to market because it's been a request from our users. It's just easier to save your cart. I don't know. It's just a behavior that we have.
Yeah.
Many of them, we want an app for the products we're loyal to. So it's a bit too new to give you like % overall, but positive initial signs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you can get your most loyal consumer base to have like half of them downloaded, right? Like that's that's a good telltale sign.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have like the, most up to date, because I know I put you on the spot a little bit with that %, so I wasn't expecting anything. Super, super hardcore. And I'm sure it changes, right, as you start to release it to,
100%.
GA.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you all too didn't want it to be like this grand thing where you announce it and then like so many people go to download it and then you're like, oh my God, like overwhelmed. So it's easier to roll it out slower.
Right. And just see if there's any issues. Getting that user feedback is always helpful.
Yeah.
See if there's anything that we missed out on. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very much relate with our, just with like beta testing things, with your most loyal like customers who know you, who you have that relationship with. much easier to iterate on something with when you already have their trust versus like someone who just, I don't know, stumbles on the Martie app, or someone who just, it's their first experience and then they're like little bugs, right? Like it could just turn them away from an experience. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so fascinating to me. And my mind, of course, goes to like, I feel you all are probably all strategizing around like, okay, once we know we have the app and it's secure, in like the product side of things, like how do we start to market and how do we start to use that to like, how do you like product-led growth? Like, how are you using that technology to then emphasize your already existing consumer base? Is very exciting. Yeah, I wanted to ask though, so I know we talked about a little bit of the customer experience, and I want to tap into the brand side of things just for a second, because as obviously someone is interacting with Martie, you're hoping that they're seeing the educational blogs that you have, seeing, you know, the mission that you all stand true to. What are you hoping that the branding, when you have the brand of Martie, what are you hoping that the consumers take away from their interactions with you all?
So from the beginning, when me and Corey, my co-founder, we spent so much time before launch, like what's the name? What's the feel? Like, who are we addressing? What kind of company are we? And that's still true today. I think that's conversations that you need to come back to again and again as a team to make sure that you've evolved like planned, especially in the startup where like things are happening so fast and you're growing fast and there's new team members and customers and so forth. From the beginning, when we started looking at Martie, we think of Martie like the IKEA of food. And what I mean with that is like, everyone knows IKEA and everyone knows IKEA for being affordable. Most people are like proud to shop IKEA. Most people have something in their household from IKEA and you wouldn't be ashamed. Some people that move and have their first condo apartment will have everything IKEA. And it kind of is like, isn't this great? I got everything on IKEA. Like people are proud and it's because it's modern and it looks good. It's smart because it's affordable. It's just like, it has everything that you want from like, you know, just the positioning while being affordable. And when we look at the grocery space, you can find affordable groceries, but shopping food for your family at the $1 store, you will not go out of there and be like, look at me, I got all of the, you know, it's just, most people don't feel great about shopping food in that environment. So what we're wanting to do here is create an experience where like, you're proud to get your Martie box on your doorstep. You know that it's good for the environment. You know that it's a deal. It's awesome foods at awesome prices. And when someone's like, God, these chips are amazing, you're gonna be like, yeah, I got it at Martie. I saved $4 on that bag of chips. Because crazily enough, chips are very expensive today. But so that's what we're trying to do when we think of our branding. We think of like fun colors, kid friendly. We want to be super accessible. We don't want to be too precious. We don't want to be hard to get to. We don't want to be fancy. We do want to be modern, but again, with that soft touch of like, we're here for everyone. We should not feel we're here. We're, you know, we're moms, we're people, we're like affordable foods. Everyone's welcome. So that's very important. And doing so while still feeling like you want to be involved with us. It's modern. It looks good. It's just like a fun design. So that's always what we've gone for when we're looking at our branding and positioning.
Yeah, that's such an interesting way of looking at the branding, because obviously, I mean, it comes up a lot about us just talking about branding on this podcast and like having the like wanting to be the IKEA of food. I think that's like that point really hits home, because when I think about that, I'm like, I know so many people who are like, oh my God, let's go to IKEA. Like it's a whole experience, right? And like, they could be their own whole case study. And I'm sure people have written up case studies on them of like their marketing and how they were able to achieve that. But it's like, I know people who go on dates there or like, just like are bored and they're like, oh, let's just go look at what they have because like it, why not? Right. And
you kind of feel like you can always find a deal and you're going in for one thing and you step out with 20, but you're like super happy for all the 20 things that you got, you know, like
found great ones.
Right.
Yeah. And everyone, like I'm such a bargain hunter. Like I love a good deal. Who doesn't love a good deal, right? Like, I think about that when I'm shopping. Like I totally do that where someone asks me like, oh, where'd you get that? Like, and compliments it. And like, whether it's like a piece of right, like apparel, whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this at, let's say like Marshall's or something like that. And I'm like, and they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm like, I know, it just makes it like a sweeter win. So I love,
100%.
yeah, that fits so well. And I could see it. I want you all to be the IKEA.
Yeah. Love it.
I know we're coming up close to time, but I have one more, I'm going to get to one more question before we close this out. And so the question is that I had for you was branding, obviously really important, customer experience, like your mission, staying true to all of that, very, very concentric with each other, very related. Do you think that there's one point in the customer journey that branding is the most influential? Or do you think it's really whenever someone is interacting with your brand, that's when you want to make sure, that branding is prevalent and present?
So here's the thing. I think there's so many layers of this onion, right? For us, I think it is important, just like when you arrive at Martie, are we a company to trust? Like in today's environment, like the branding tells you so much of your gut feel. Is this a company to trust? Is this a company to spend time with? Is this a company to send my money to? So the first gut feel for any consumer to even like engage with you is super important. That first look is very important. For us, I also know we will never be better when I look at conversion rate. It's kind of like the products and vendors and brands that we work with and the prices we offer. So in one bucket, actually our branding doesn't make, it doesn't matter at all. Because if I don't have the right inventory, you will not buy anything from Martie. It doesn't matter our branding if we don't have our inventory sorted and correct to present to you with the correct prices, right? But if we do that, first look, very important. Then you're going to look at my inventory. So first look, if you're even going to look, conversion rate is like all inventory. And then we're going to get into this third bucket for us, which is we know some categories where we have to have like the best brand in class. So if I'm going to sell you ketchup, you're going to want to see Heinz. Like we need to figure out some of these big brands to show you these big brands and show you those prices. And then there's other categories like pasta where most people don't necessarily care that much of the brand, but they want to see 89, 69 cent pasta. So once I sell you the Colgate, toothpaste or the Heinz ketchup, that does a lot of the work for me. But when I'm presenting you the, 79 cent pasta, then all of a sudden you need to trust Martie, right? So we have a lot of things happening for us. And like, when does brand come into play? What can our brand move in terms of conversion rate, trust, just people engaging with us, liking what we do, understanding our mission and vision, telling their friends, feeling good about shopping with us. And then inventory for us and what we present and what prices is also its own bucket that really we need to be mindful of, like what partners we work with and where we're spending our time to find inventory.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I like that you have that awareness of like some categories that are just brand leaders that you are like, people are going to expect. And then other categories, this is where you'll trust Martie and say like, oh, like this is right. Like something I don't care too much about the brand about, like, I'll just go with this pasta instead. That's so fascinating. I feel like I know I have so many other questions that I would love to ask you, but I know we're coming up on time, so I'm going to cut us off. But thank you so much, Louise, for joining us today. This has been really, really insightful, really fun to have you on as well. So thank you for making the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.